Hey everybody, Sid here with Ransyd Gaming. The video I have for you today was recorded a couple days ago, Friday night, right when I got back from my first ever draft with Star Wars Unlimited. It was a blast. I wanted to go through my thought process for drafting, the deck I built, and tell you a little bit about how it performed. Enjoy. Hey everybody, here we are back with another video. So I just got back from my first ever draft with Star Wars Unlimited. It's opening weekend, Friday night. Pre-release is just 1 week ago, and I was really excited to get back into the store and try out the limited format with this game. And we'll cut right to the chase. Draft is really, really fun. I was really looking forward to saying goodbye to Luke and Vader a little bit. I felt like a lot of people just kind of defaulted to those leaders during the pre-release. So I was excited to see what players would build when they didn't have those kind of easy fallbacks, when they couldn't just, always have a villain and a hero option. Because I think both of those leaders work pretty well with the base set decks. My deck is great. I love it. I think it does exactly what it needs to do. It takes from a pretty tried and true archetype of Sabine Green and tried to make the closest thing it could make to it. As I was drafting, the cards were coming, so I thought, okay, well let's make Sabine Green. It's obviously not the most tuned deck. It's a draft, but I think you'll see it's a pretty close deck to Sabine Green, right, in just 30 cards. I had a lot of success. I went 3-0 and won each match in straight sets. I think Sabine is a really, really strong option. For whatever reason, my pod was also leaning pretty heavily into villain cards, it felt like, because a lot of hero cards were getting passed to me. I was sitting next to another player who was clearly also going hero, but the two of us were always like, there's so many options, there's so many options. He ended up playing Leia. My leaders when I first opened my packs were Sabine, Leia, and Rey or Han Solo. And I almost thought about taking the Solo, but I've been practicing on Force Table a little bit. And when I get Sabine, I just try to build like a Sabine Green deck because I know that deck a little bit. And it's surprisingly easy to build like Sabine Green Light, Sabine Lime Green, It wasn't that hard. So I grabbed Sabine. I think I grabbed the Hyperspace Tarkin just because he was Hyperspace. And then the IG-88 was the last one that was passed to me. But right from the get-go, I felt like, okay, I'm gonna probably go Sabine, except for I'll show you one card in the deck real quick. The first pack that we opened after leader drafting, I pulled a Devastator, and there was some other really good cards in that pack that would fit with Sabine Green. But if you've been watching the channel, you know that I am I'm really into trying to build a playset. I want to build a playset as soon as possible so I can make every deck. And seeing a legendary in the first pack that I opened, I thought, well, okay, I probably have to take this legendary. And if my next pick, if there was like a great kind of green villain card, then maybe I could have shifted over to Tarkin. I kind of put that in the back of my head. But then I kept getting past really good hero cards. So I quickly went to Sabine Green. And I ended up throwing Devastator in my deck. It was in my deck for all 3 games. It got resourced, I think, in about half the games. One game I held on to it and tried to get to 12 resources, but it didn't happen. I was able to close it out before 12, and it seems silly to extend the game just to play Devastator. So Devastator never came out, but he was my 31st card. He was a great little resource for me, so shout out to Devastator. Didn't do anything for me, but he was in my deck. And I kind of like being cheeky and doing the 31 or the 51, that one extra. And in draft, why not, right? So let's look at some of the stuff that was passed to me. Over here on the right are cards that did not make it into the deck. I don't really like Cantina Braggart, but it was a red card that came to me late in a pack. Academy Training I think is fine, but it's just the tempo of attachments I'm not a big fan of. I think Sabine wants to go when it's time to go. And if you're delaying and slowing down and taking too many actions, you often miss your chance to grab initiative. And I think she wants to get initiative when she can. Regional Sympathizers, I mean, they're heroic cards. They work in the deck. They're just not very good. That 3-4 stat line I think is awful for 4. So we don't play them. I drafted them in case I needed them. But when it came time to build the deck, I just found there was no need for them at all. AT Suppressor, shout out to whoever let that pass to the last card in one of the packs. I was just like, okay, I'll take a foil uncommon, sure. And then here's a couple other reds that just didn't make it in. I felt like I could cut Starwing Scout because I had enough other things in space. Here's some honorable mention for some cards that got cut. Normally you'd love to see a For a Cause I Believe in a Sabine deck, but I just didn't get enough heroes. I felt like counting out my hero cards, I'd be getting maybe 2 damage out of it, maybe 3 if I was really lucky. And it just didn't feel like it was good enough. In retrospect, I think I maybe would have included it because it is really good, even in a Sabine light deck like this. Shout out to Saw. I thought maybe I'd have a reason to play him for 6, but I also thought, well, if I can't, it's a rare, and I'm trying to build a play set. Search Your Feelings. It was like 3 or 4 cards left in a pack, and there was nothing really that fit what I wanted to do in my deck. And in those cases, when you're drafting, just grab a rare, especially when you're trying to build a playset. And then we got a General Crow here that did not make it into the deck. I think there's maybe 4 or 5 cards left, not many red or green options at that point. And he was a rare, he was a hyperspace. I thought maybe I'll actually play him for 7, but I ended up finding cards around that slot that were just much better suited to the deck. So these cards did not make it in, but shout out to all those rares that got passed to me, because we ended up getting a pretty good haul of rares and a legendary just out of 3 packs. So that was pretty exciting. I went ahead and put my deck in cost order to give you a sense of the curve, but I really love this deck. These Spec Force soldiers are pretty unassuming, but they are MVPs in this deck. The ability to take that Sentinel ability away at a key moment when you need to rush the base was so good. I love these guys. Mon Mothma is a staple of Sabine Green. I got a lot of Rebels in this deck. There's 2 of them right here. And Mon Mothma was always a great card to see early. Late game, I was usually resourcing her, but I was happy to see her early in games. Pathfinder, just a solid Rebel. Saboteur is really good. There's a lot of shields still in limited play. And just the fact that you get to defeat any number of shields. I was using this guy to just knock shields off something, and then I could go through and take it out. It was really good little clutch card. Partisan Insurgent is good with Sabine. You get him out early, turn 1 or turn 2. Sabine's coming out like the next turn, and suddenly he's hitting for 3. I really like the Partisan Insurgent, and he can survive most trades at 4 health. He's a good card. 2 A-Wings. I mean, absolutely clutch cards for this deck. The fact that I got 2 Spec Soldiers, 2 A-Wings, love it. Jet Agitator, I think, is actually really good out of Sabine. Because he's doesn't cost much. He comes out early usually. If you see him late, you just resource him. But when you do see him early and you play him with Sabine, that 2 damage to a ground or base is really solid. He can take out units all by himself and give you value against the base. Look at that. We got red 3. I mean, we're building Sabine Green Light, right? Sabine Light Green. Red 3, MVP. Just such a good rare. Such a good rare in this deck. We only got 1 Wing Leader. I was hoping to see more, but like one of the best plays of this deck is A-Wing turn 1, Wing Leader turn 2, and your A-Wing's just smacking the base for 5. And if they didn't find space, and there's not a lot of space in limited, you're rolling. Disabling Fangfighter did use his ability a few times on like an experience or a shield. I was worried someone might have a Treacherous or something, but I never saw one. So Disabling Fangfighter, still a good card, I think, for kind of a just-in-case scenario. I usually would hold it in hand until I felt like a danger had passed from some attachment. Ardent Sympathizer, I don't think I ever played him. I think he was pretty much always resourced. There's just so many better options in this deck at that 3-cost spot. Fleet Lieutenant, wish I had found more, but this one guy did really well for me. Battlefield Marine, again, wish I had found more, but he's really good. This is where really the bread and butter of this deck. This deck was able to hold up against some really big opponents, some really big opponent boards, because we got 1, 2, 3, shout out to the foil, Echo-based Defenders. These guys are the MVPs of the deck. I mean, you're putting 3 of these in a constructed deck, and to get 3 of them out of 30 cards, I always saw at least 2 of them. On a couple games, I saw 3 of them. They really held it down and allowed me to be aggressive. K2SO, absolutely. Frontier ATRT, don't sleep on this card. It's really good in limited, like really good. That 5 health is awesome. Wampa, I don't know if I ever actually deployed Wampa, but I think he's good enough to be in there when you need another red card. Escort Skiff, love Ambush. We got Zeb in there. We actually had one good Zeb play. I kind of hate on Zeb because he's hard to make impactful on a board, but in limited, I used him to take out a relatively weak unit. I think it was like a Delmico actually, which is a good unit, but only 3 HP. I think he hit a Delmico and then dealt us 4 damage to a ground unit, and it was enough to take out their Boba. It was like a really good play to like Delmico Boba in one Zeb attack. Loved it. Krillian Freighter locked down multiple games in space because in limited, most people have pretty small starships, right? Kind of like dinky starships. And Krillian Freighter would like stop 2-3 attacks, and opponents would often just like stare at it because they didn't want to actually sacrifice all of their space just to get rid of one Sentinel, and that was often to their chagrin because then he would just keep hitting the base for 4. Steadfast Battalion, these are really good. I'm sad I only got one, but solid. When you get Sabine out there in 4, Steadfast Battalion out there with 5 resources, and if Sabine survives, they're hitting for 7. So good. These right here. If my Sentinels were MVP, these are a quick runner up. The Guerrilla attack pods are so good in limited. Either my base or their base always seemed to have 15 damage by the time I got to 6 resources, and if I had an attack pod, it was hitting that board. It was immediately readying, it was hitting a unit, it was getting a bunch of grit, and then I would try and steal initiative, and they were hitting back for like 7, 8, 9 once. I got the max kind of grit on it. So good. Shout out to the foil. Rebel Assault's just a fun card. When you need to get a quick close, like it can produce a lot of damage out of those 2 attacks with a +1/+1. Carabast is my only removal event in this whole. I never found like an open fire or anything, but Carabast like allowed me to defeat a Leo once. It's actually a pretty good card. When you put Carabast together with these attack pods, you can do a lot of damage because you're trying to find ways to get damage on the attack pods, and they can take a lot. So I did 4 damage with it once with Carabast because you get the 3+1, and I did a 5 damage with it once. Very cool card that actually worked out better than I thought it would. Keep Fighting is money. Like you get those experience tokens on the Green Squadron A-Wing. It's hitting for 5, but it's still at 3 power because the raid doesn't count to its power. So then it's hitting for 5, and then you stand it up with Keep Fighting, hit it for another 5. Really, really good. And then here's honorable mention. I only used it, I think, twice out of my 6 games. It costs 7, of course, but again, Overwhelming Barrage, twice I kind of orchestrated Overwhelming Barrage with the Guerrilla Attack Pod. So obviously Overwhelming Barrage is not being played for 5, it's being played for 7. So when I had 6 resources, I'd drop the Guerrilla Attack Pod. It would ready immediately because I'd make sure I had the 15 damage. It would hit a unit. It would go up to maybe 7, 8 power, and then I'd try and get an initiative if I could, and then very next turn play Overwhelming Barrage. Suddenly I'm doing 9 or 10 damage with the barrage before the Guerrilla Attack Pod is even attacked for another 9 or 10. Obviously trying to hit the base with that attack with the Guerrilla Attack Pod, using the Overwhelming Barrage to clear the board. Really nice combo. Can confirm this is one of the absolute best cards in limited, and you can play it out of color and it's still worth it at 7. I promise. So that was the deck. Sabine Light, and shout out to the Devastator who was in there. Really, really fun deck. Got lucky that most players seem to be building a kind of villain archetype at our pod. So got a lot of good stuff passed to me. A lot of the stuff I think people sleep on. I could have taken a 3rd Guerrilla Attack Pod, but thought, oh, maybe it won't be that good. I should have taken it because I always wanted to see that attack pod when I hit 6 resources. Always, I was looking for it. It's a really, really fun deck. I think Sabine Green is an early contender for like best draft leader and base combo. Really, really strong. Fast. Every single game, I was lucky enough to win each matchup, But some of them, I always had time to kind of relax, talk to my opponent, ask them about how they're doing, how they're liking the game. Never felt stressed for time at all. So if you like a deck that is going to move quickly, Sabine Green, I think it's your deck. All right, everybody, that's it for this. I had a great time. I can't wait to play more draft.